Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Life, Liberty, and Levin in our special election edition. I think it's apropos to begin this program with a quote from Thomas Paine, one of the great early pamphleteers, journalists, if you will, reporters, if you will. And he wrote Common Sense, which was read by about 125,000 colonists. That's a lot of people back then. He also wrote a pamphlet called The American Crisis, and he wrote it on December 23rd, 1776. And George Washington and other founders have credited Thomas Paine, among others, but Paine in particular, with giving the intellectual and the patriotic founding for our movement for independence. And here's what he said in part. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Freedom was his emphasis. Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us all in all cases whatsoever. And if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then is there no such a thing as slavery upon earth. Even the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can be only with God. That's Thomas Paine. You don't hear much about Thomas Paine these days, certainly by the media. Now, why am I reading that? What kind of soldier are you? I'm not talking about Army, Marines, and so forth. What kind of soldier are you? Are you a soldier for liberty or not? Because that's what this election's all about. The men who founded this country understood liberty. The men who founded this country understood the limitations of government. And the men who founded this country also understood what was meant by a free press. Do you know, back before the Revolution and during the Revolution, there were only a couple of dozen newspapers, a little over 30, less than 40. Even before that, there were a relative handful of printers, and the printers were the great patriots, because how else would you get the word out? But the pamphleteers were key. There were many, many pamphleteers. And they would write their pamphlets, which would include some news of the day, typically old news, because it took time for news to travel. But the vast majority of the pamphleteers were patriots for liberty, for limited government, for representative government, for private property rights. They were pamphleteers against tyranny, and their pamphlets would be posted at pubs and other public places. Their pamphlets would be circulated and by mouth discussed at the dinner table and among community meetings and so forth. These were true patriots, and they had a big cause, the cause of founding an independent United States. Contrast that with the media today, which is crucially important in this upcoming election. Contrast it with the media today. Do the media ever talk about individual liberty, private property rights, natural law, unalienable rights? Do they ever talk about that? No. What do the media talk about? Typically one of two things: pushing the progressive left agenda or trashing the President of the United States. That's pretty much it. They are Johnny and Janie two notes. And it's a big problem in this country. So this election is about not only defeating many, many radicals that the Democrats have nominated, some of them are outright bigots, but it's also about pushing back against the media that has no comprehension whatsoever what freedom of the press means, the history of freedom of the press, and why it's so important. Freedom of the press exists to undergird freedom of speech. Freedom of the press is simply a person or a group of people, or today businesses, communicating with the American people, sharing information with the American people. But freedom of speech is the basis for freedom of the press. But when the press becomes myopic, malignant, when so-called reporters are really practicing groupthink, because the vast majority of them are located in and around Washington, D.C., in or around New York City, in and around Los Angeles, not Kansas, not Missouri, not Arkansas, you name it, all the states in between. Well, then they have a pretty much aggregate mindset. And that aggregate mindset is to advance the cause of centralized government, ubiquitous government. And now, even worse, they are attacking those of us who disagree with that alien ideology, progressivism, that was imported into the United States. Progressivism, which is the progeny of, yes, Marxism, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Hegelism. Hegel, German philosophers who wrote about fundamentally transforming and altering the kind of society that we have, attacking capitalism, attacking the individual, insisting that the only way the individual can be really fully realized is through the state, that we all must be a part of the state, we all must work for the state, pushing this notion of radical egalitarianism. Let me ask you something. In Arizona, the Democrat Senate candidate, is that not her? In Florida, the Democrat gubernatorial candidate, is that not him? In Georgia, the Democrat gubernatorial candidate, is that not her? Is it not Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris? Is it not Barack Obama and all the rest? The Democrat Party now is not the Democrat Party of even 30, 40 years ago. The Democrat Party is an extremely radical, European-type left-wing party. And in order for their agenda to advance, they must undermine our constitutional order and our Republican order. But it's not just them. They have a mouthpiece, they have a voice, and that is the modern-day American media, the press. Survey after survey has shown us that the vast majority of so-called reporters are liberals and or Democrats. The vast majority of so-called journalists or reporters live at the edges of the country, not in the center of the country. The vast majority of the major media live in the edges of the country, not in the center of the country. So we have this cultural battle going on between those of us who wish to uphold our traditions, those of us who actually believe in constitutional republicanism, and those who do not. And the reason why the Kavanaugh hearings were so important, because it all came to a head right there. Basic issues of Western civilization and the Enlightenment, basic issues of the American founding, due process, presumption of innocence, were on trial, were on display at that hearing over a Supreme Court justice. And the Democrats, to a man and woman, rejected the Enlightenment, rejected Western civilization, rejected the Bill of Rights. Oh, it's just an interview. It's not just an interview. If somebody's accused of criminal behavior, whether it is in a congressional form or some other form, they have basic rights. They're not guilty until proven innocent. They are innocent until proven guilty. And in Kavanaugh's case, there wasn't a shred of evidence. There wasn't a scintilla of evidence. None. And yet, look what they did to this man. But this is illustrative, because they're doing it to you. Throughout the media, as I speak, when you look at CNN or MSNBC, when you read the Washington Post or the New York Times, and that ilk, they're trashing you, the American people. They're comparing you to Nazis. They're calling you racists. They're calling you white supremacists. We reject this. We abhor this. We embrace individual liberty and constitutionalism and unalienable rights for all people, regardless of color, regardless of gender, regardless of religion. We believe in the individual. That is our philosophy. That is our philosophy as conservatives. They do not. They identify us as groups. They put us into groups. And you can see it on CNN and MSNBC in particular. It's truly outrageous. And these are news organizations. And they are so furious that they were not able to determine who would be president in the last presidential cycle. They have spent every hour and every day since Donald Trump was elected president, actually before, every hour and every day trying to destroy his character, trying to uproot his administration, trying to create controversy in order to diminish him and diminish you, and to change the course of the 2016 election and to change the course of history. That's exactly what they're doing right now. It's time to stand up. That's what Tuesday's about. For ourselves, for our families, for our faith, for our country, for our party, and for our president. It's time to stand up. I know the vast majority of you, if there's early voting, have already voted or you're prepared to vote on Tuesday. It's not enough. You need to be Thomas Paine. You need to tell your family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors that they must vote. If they're going to vote the right way, you need to be in charge. You need to be following up with them. You need to be your precinct captain. If those of you watching me now contact 4, 5, 6, 7 people or even more, take it upon yourself. Forget about the political party and the RNC. Take it upon yourself, you, the modern day Thomas Paines, to get the vote out in your own little familial or social circle. You will make the difference in close elections throughout the country for the Senate, for governorships, and congressional races. You will push back against this force in the media, against this force in the Democrat Party, against this force in Hollywood. You will push back against the far East Coast and the far West Coast that's trying to devour and control the rest of the country. It is time to push back. The press has interposed itself in this election in a way that I have never seen before. In a way that I've never seen before. They want you to believe that the President of the United States is a racist because of his immigration policies. The President is not a racist. The President's immigration policies are identical to what Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Harry Reid, Joe Biden's immigration policies were a decade ago. A decade ago. They want you to believe that this president is destroying freedom of the press. How so? By calling them out? By calling them out and exposing what they're doing? Unlike John Adams in the Sedition Act, back when he was president, or Abraham Lincoln in his executive order, or Woodrow Wilson in the Sedition Act of 1918, we don't have any Sedition Act that this president is enforcing. He's not putting journalists and editors in prison as those presidents did. He's not shutting down newspapers as those presidents did. The only threat he poses to the media is he fights back. President's not attacking any part of the Constitution. He's trying to defend the Constitution. But it's up to us now. It's up to you and me. The question is this. We have men and women, young men and women who volunteered to fight for this country throughout our history. And we have men and women today in one hellhole after another. What are they fighting for? Are they fighting for the fundamental transformation of America? Are they fighting for this government program or that government program? Are they fighting for some bigots who are running for office as Democrats? Are they fighting for a so-called free press that continues to trash this country? No! They're fighting for you and your principles. And the least we can do here at home is to not only vote, but make sure our family, friends, colleagues, and neighbors vote too. It's not asking too much. It's up to us. If more of us vote than them, we win and they lose. This is a truly, truly crucial election for you, for your family. What kind of country do you want to have? That's what's on the ballot. You're going to vote or you're going to watch? You're going to get others to vote? I have a lot of faith in you, America. I have a lot of faith in you who are viewing the program. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's very important to go through a number of these races and get a feel for what's going on in the country. It's very important that people turn out and vote and bring out family members, and nobody better to help us than one of the great pollsters in America, John McLaughlin. How are you, brother?
Pleasure to be here.
You were Donald Trump's pollster during the campaign. You're probably the only pollster in the world that got that right. You're CEO and partner McLaughlin and Associates. You graduated from Fordham, got a BA. You hold an MBA from Fordham University with concentrations in finance and quantitative methods.
Right.
Glad I wasn't in your class. I wouldn't have done very well. John McLaughlin, let's jump into this. As I understand it, there are 78 competitive races.
In the House.
In the House of Representatives that are almost ties.
Yes.
67 of those are Republican districts.
Absolutely.
You've indicated to me before, 16 lean Democrat. and 11 of those are Republican districts.
Yes.
26 lean Republican, and 25 of those are Republican districts. Toss-ups, 36.
Right.
31 of which are Republican districts.
Yes.
So, if Republicans and Trump supporters turn out and vote in these Republican districts, Republicans might hold the House. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna, but isn't that what the stats show you?
Yes. In fact, we had a poll last week, national generic ballot. We had 44% saying they voted Republican, 46 Democrat, 10% were undecided. It's in range. Donald Trump won the election on Election Day. I mean, there was a record. Our strategy was to bring out new voters. And there was 9 million more voters who voted in 2016 than did in 2012. And those were the voters who came out and won Pennsylvania first, won Wisconsin, won Michigan. We had a strategy to build a heartland coalition of voters to come out in Sunbelt and Rust Belt. That's where these districts are, a lot of them. And even in the parts of New York State or California or Pennsylvania, New Jersey, those are our voters. They're exurbs and suburban voters in those districts. Trump brought out 63 million voters. And in a typical midterm election, you only get 90 million voters came out in 2010, 83 million in 2014. There's going to be more than 90 million voters this time. Could approach 100 million because the anti-Trump voters are coming out to some degree. But now, since the Kavanaugh hearings, the Republicans and the Trump voters have gotten re-engaged, and that 63 million on Tuesday, just like they came out 2 years ago, they can win the House. They can hold the House. And you know what they want to do? They want to stop Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, if she gets control of the House, she will be the most powerful Democrat in the country.
Let's go through some of these races.
Okay.
Let's start with the Senate. Michigan, John James versus Debbie Stabenow. This guy is a superstar.
Yes.
An African-American, a combat veteran, a successful small businessman, a traditional conservative, getting almost no national media attention, almost no support from Hollywood, Oprah Winfrey, and so forth and so on, and yet he's really putting up a fight. What do you make of that race?
He's closing. What's amazing is here's an African-American candidate who, you know, the Democrats are all touting Gillum in Florida, they're touting Abrams in Georgia, but where's the national media on this race? And there's Trump voters are coming back out in Michigan for him.
So if the people vote, he wins.
Yes.
Let's look at Montana. Something interesting there. We have Rosendale, the Republican, Tester, the Democrat. Tester goes to Montana. He pretends he's one of the good old boys, that he's a moderate, comes to Washington, votes the New York, Massachusetts way. He's a sure Schumer vote for a leader of the Democrats there. Rosendale is the Republican. He's the state auditor. Now the Libertarian has dropped out and endorsed Rosendale. What do you make of that race?
I think Rosendale's going to win. Again, it focuses on turnout, but the irony is Tester was running that he was somebody who voted for Trump. And now he's been exposed. He didn't give us a vote on tax cuts. He didn't give us a vote on Kavanaugh or Gorsuch. So I think he's been exposed, and Trump has made it a mission to see him defeated. He's been to Montana. So
then again, it's a tight race. If
close
people
race.
don't vote, we lose.
It's got to come out on Tuesday. Everything's pointed to Tuesday.
Texas, Ted Cruz, and we have Robert Francis O'Rourke. $70 million O'Rourke has spent.
Right.
Half of it's come or more have come out of Manhattan, Los Angeles area, Hollywood, and so forth. They're trying to take out Cruz because Cruz is the leading conservative in the United States Senate. And behind Trump, people would argue, is the second most prominent conservative. So they want to make an example of him. How's that going to turn out?
It's backfiring on them because there's another state that post-Kavanaugh where Trump is popular in Texas. And Trump is basically his voters, and it won't even be close. He'll win decisively, Cruz, because O'Rourke, running as an anti-Trump candidate, is basically sending votes to Cruz every day.
He's also running on Bernie Sanders issues. It's unbelievable.
Right.
All right, quickly, Florida, Rick Scott versus Nelson. This is a nail-biter.
This is a very close race, just like the presidential race. It's going to be that close. But Rick Scott's done an amazing job as governor, particularly with these hurricanes. He even took people in from Puerto Rico when they were hurt. And he's been focused on making sure the panhandle recovers. I think all the polls have it dead even. He pulls this one out.
Missouri, Josh Hawley, Claire McCaskill. Has she finally been exposed as the leftist that she is?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a state that was solid for the president. So I think that one, you're getting the Trump voters fold back in. We've polled there for a super PAC, and we have Hawley ahead.
Okay, again, I just want to caution the audience. If you don't turn out and you don't bring out family members and friends and colleagues, all this will be reversed. All of this will change. So you're assuming the Trump supporters, the Republicans come out in large numbers and do what they should do.
Right, and they should make sure they bring their friends. So bring a friend.
Arizona, you have McSally and Sinema. The Sinema is like a kook.
Yeah.
What's going to happen there?
McSally will pull that one out in a close race. Very close. It's very close, though.
Because there was an ugly primary there.
Right.
Conservatives don't trust McSally because she's been relatively moderate and so forth. But as I said on my radio show, that's not what this election is about. It's not your typical election. This election is about defending the election of 2016, defending the Constitution. This is really basic stuff.
Yes.
West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey versus Joe Manchin.
Manchin's always been popular, but West Virginians don't want to go back to the policies of Barack Obama, where they were closing coal mines and putting people in West Virginia out of work. So in this one, this is really tight right now. The edge is still for Manchin, but again, it's another state where if the Trump voters come out on Tuesday, we could pull a big upset.
He will vote for Schumer to be their leader. He'll throw 95% of their votes to the Democrats. Indiana, quickly, Mike Braun versus Joe Donnelly.
That's another one. Donnelly's still ahead, and the Libertarian candidate is taking some votes that would go back in for Braun. But right now, Donnelly has an edge, but Trump's going in there.
Nevada, Dean Heller and Jackie Rosen.
That one again. It's another one that's really close, and you won't know till Tuesday based on turnout. There's a lot of these races where it's all coming down to, does the Trump coalition that came out 2 years ago come back out and support these candidates? Because why would we want people who are going to vote for a leadership that are going to impeach our president?
If we have a significant voter turnout, these tight races, 2-3 points here and there, they will flip Republican.
Yes. If
they do, these tight races, we're talking about half a dozen, 10 races, they'll flip the other way.
Yeah.
That's how crucial this is.
Absolutely.
The Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, most weeknights, you can check me out on Levin TV, Levin TV. Go to crtv.com/Mark, crtv.com/Mark. We'd love to have you. We have wonderful hosts throughout the network. Or give us a call at 844-LEVIN TV, 844-LEVIN TV. We'll be right back.
Live from America's News Headquarters, I'm Lauren Green. Both parties pulling out all the stops ahead of Election Day. President Trump holding 2 rallies today in Georgia and Tennessee, while former President Obama fired up Democrats in Indiana and Illinois.
This is a big one. It'll decide whether we build on the extraordinary prosperity that we've achieved for our nation, or whether we let the radical Democrats take control of Congress.
Health care for millions is on the ballot. A fair shake for working families is on the ballot. And most importantly, the character of our nation is on the ballot.
It comes amid record voter enthusiasm, with a whopping 34 million people voting early. I'm Lauren Green. Now back to Life, Liberty, and Levin.
John McLaughlin, let's take a look at the House of Representatives. And I just want all the viewers to understand that even though a number of these people may not be their representatives, they vote on issues that affect them across the board. So they can still support them, financially. But even more, people who live in these districts, they really need to turn out. Let's take a look at several of them. These are these tight districts. Virginia 7, Dave Bratt.
Right.
He beat Eric Cantor in the primary a few years back. He's part of the Freedom Caucus, a leader in the Freedom Caucus. He's facing Abigail Spanberger, who's a former CIA analyst, but a hardcore leftist. And she's running as a moderate and a CIA analyst. How's that race look?
Well, that's a district that Donald Trump won by 6. It's a really dead even race right now. But those suburban voters in Chesterfield County, if they don't vote for Dave Bratt, you're going to get a Democrat who's going to raise their taxes
and vote for impeachment.
Oh, absolutely.
Barbara Comstock, she's the last Republican in the little circle around Washington, D.C. suburbs, Fairfax, McLean, Loudoun County. She's the incumbent running against Jennifer Wexton, who is the biggest taxing Democrat in the state Senate in Virginia.
Yeah.
Tight race.
Tight race. And Barbara, I've always done her polling. And we've never released it, but we released one a couple of weeks ago where she was ahead by a point. And the Washington Post, the rest have ridiculed this, but let me tell you, she's the hardest working person. She represents her district extremely well, and she always defies the polls. Because last time, Hillary Clinton won her district by 10 points, and she won by 6.
And she's being targeted by leadership. She's being targeted by Bloomberg. She's being targeted by the Washington Post. Dana Rohrabacher. California 48 versus Harley Rauda, I guess the name is. Rohrabacher was a speechwriter. I remember him in the White House for Ronald Reagan.
In the 90s.
In the 90s. He's been around for decades. Huntington Beach in that area. What's it look like?
That's one where, since they're not getting the blue wave, the Democrats are putting in a green wave. Mike Bloomberg just put $5 or $6 million in there to try to beat him. And Dana was a little ahead in the polls, so that's another race where we got to get our people
Another turnout race.
Yep.
These are all turnout races.
They got to send their mail-in ballots.
A lot of these, your point, are Republican districts.
Yes.
So if Republicans and Trump supporters and they turn out and vote, we win.
Yes.
George Holding versus Linda Coleman, North Carolina 2nd.
Another one of my candidates, extremely close. There's been a C4 from the Democrats attacking us on different issues. But Coleman's on the ropes right now because she supports sanctuary cities and higher taxes.
Most of them do, don't they? The Democrats, unbelievable.
You know what you're going to get if
they're running on open borders, sanctuary cities, higher taxes,
government-run health care,
foreign policy. Yeah, a top-down government-run health care, eliminating Medicare. It's incredible. John Faso versus Antonio Delgado. Faso is the Republican in the New York 19th district.
Right.
How do you see it?
That one is dead even. The polls have us dead even. I do the polling for John. John is a very solid candidate, but Delgado came in. He raised $3.6 million the last quarter. He doesn't even live there. He just got parachuted in by Pelosi to try to take this away from the people of upstate New York. Yes, very tight race.
Okay. Lee Zeldin versus Perry Gershon. Now, Lee Zeldin, I happen to know. He's a combat vet.
Solid.
He is a wonderful guy. He's a solid Republican and a conservative. And they're targeting him with this hard left-wing radical who has a lot of money in Long Island.
Right.
New York 1, what's it look like?
Gershon's spending a lot of ads, absolutely stuff that's not true on Lee, saying he would take away people's health care, et cetera. I mean, Lee is a solid conservative, and Gershon's spending a lot of money, but people love Lee out there.
It's tight.
They know him as an Iraq War veteran. Yeah, it's tight.
Florida 27, Maria Salazar, the Republican, versus Donna Shalala, the former Clinton administration official. I understand it's a largely Hispanic district, and she doesn't speak Spanish.
Shalala doesn't.
Right, that's Shalala. Obviously, Salazar does.
Maria,
how's that district?
Salazar was the Mega TV broadcaster down there, and she's very, very well known. This was one the Democrats thought they had in the bag, and now they're finding out that they're actually losing. So this one the Republicans can keep.
Carlos Curbelo, the incumbent Republican, versus Debbie Muscarsell, I guess.
Right.
What's that look like?
Carlos is very popular down there, and that's one where the Democrats are really targeting him, a lot of money, outspending him in the final week. But you know what? The voters like Carlos, and the Cuban vote for him is solid. So if the Cuban vote comes out and the other Hispanic votes come out for Carlos, he'll win.
Robert Woodall versus Carolyn Bordeaux, Georgia 7.
That's a district where the Democrats are trying to make inroads into the suburbs of Atlanta, but the governor's race is affecting it. So you've got this governor's race where basically they're trying to turn out their troops and beat us with turnout. So he's in good shape, but he's got to get through the turnout on Tuesday.
California 10, Jeff Denham versus Josh Harder. That's a tough one.
Very close race right now. Very close race.
California 45, Mimi Walters, the incumbent Republican,
again,
versus Katie Porter.
Another very, very close race that depends upon,
Where is that, Anaheim, that area?
So.
Boy, that used to be solid Republican. All that Orange County, it's unbelievable what's happened there. Iowa 3rd, David Young versus Cindy Axne. David Young being the Republican.
Well, last week, Ivanka Trump went out there at the end of the week to campaign for. That's a critical race where they tried to make trade an issue, and guess what? Donald Trump got a new deal with Canada and Mexico.
Has that helped?
That helped. Plus, he's also straightening out China. So that helps because a lot of this Iowa is about corn, soybeans. Their whole economy is agriculture.
A tight race?
It's a tight race.
Illinois 6, Peter Roskam, who is part of Republican leadership, versus Sean Casten.
Right. That's the one in Republican leadership they're really going after, and that district's changed because it's suburban Chicago. So he's in a tight race, but the Republicans should be able to win that one if they come out and vote.
Kentucky 6, Andy Barr versus Amy McGrath. I mean, the president has campaigned for Andy Barr.
Yes, and that one, if our voters come out, if they're not complacent and they come out in that part of Kentucky, he should be able to win.
All right.
Republicans should be able to keep that.
We've got a lot more. Going to finish the House, get into some of these governorships. We're not doing this because we like just mentioning names and districts and so forth. We're doing this because you folks out there, the American people, need to know what's going on in your states and in your districts. Folks, don't forget, you can see me on Levin TV almost every weeknight. Just go to crtv.com/mark, crtv.com/mark, or give us a call at 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV. We'll be right back.
He's a fighter, and again, it's another.
He's the Republican that is Polkwin.
It's another dead even race that if our voters come out that voted for Trump in that part of the state, he can win.
New Jersey 3rd, Tom MacArthur, the Republican, versus Andy Kim.
And Kim is really an extreme Democrat, had some radical views, particularly on terrorism and some other things. And MacArthur, they tried to put him on the ropes on health care, but he's fighting back. So MacArthur could win if we get the right turnout. And the Senate race may be helping us in that part with Bob Eugen, because Menendez is definitely facing a big threat because he wasn't convicted, but he certainly had problems.
He's had ethics complaints filed against him. He's pretty dirty. It's quite serious. And you raise a very interesting point, which is the Democrats are running on health care, which seems kind of odd. But they're running on health care because they're now saying Medicare for all. But seniors in this country need to understand what Medicare for all means to the Democrats is eliminating Medicare.
Yeah.
What it means to union members is eliminating their contracts that they've negotiated on health care. What it means to other Americans is employer health care goes, independent health care, it's all eliminated, and you create sort of this VA DMV system, top-down, Bernie Sanders socialist health care. That's what they're campaigning on.
Yep. If you thought Obamacare was bad, wait till they...
Yeah, well, it's France all over again. New York 22nd, Claudia Tenney versus Anthony Brindisi.
That's a tough one right now because in the published polls, the Democrat's been ahead. And he's one of those classic Democrats who's trying to tell you he's a moderate when he's not.
Isn't this happening all over the country? I would say the Democrats have nominated the most radical group of candidates in our history, in the Senate races, in the House races, and in the gubernatorial races. And not all of them, but most of them are trying to pretend that they're moderates.
Right. And you had to be for repealing the Trump tax cut, government-run health care, and open borders.
Unbelievable.
That's who they are.
Pennsylvania 1, Bucks County, those areas. Brian Fitzpatrick, the Republican incumbent, versus Scott Wallace.
He's a very good candidate. And Wallace is a really extremist, particularly on the Iran nuclear deal. He supports that. He supports things that are really to the left on foreign policy.
Texas 32, we have Pete Sessions, a longtime Republican incumbent, versus Colin Allred. What's going on there?
Well, in Pete Sessions' district, you've got a lot more of these suburban voters, and the Democrats have made it about trying to take back suburban women from Pete in that district.
How do they hope to take back suburban women? Pushing abortion.
Right, but what they don't want to tell you is they're going to raise your taxes. They're going to take away your health care.
And they're not going to do a thing about abortion. The Supreme Court has nationalized and federalized this issue of abortion, so states can operate within a small box.
Right.
So when the Democrats, oddly, running on, I guess, more availability for abortion, although it's quite available, it's a non-issue, isn't it?
Right. And Pete's a solid. He's also a smart legislator, and he really works the district.
Mia Love in Utah, Republican incumbent versus Ben McAdams. She's in trouble, isn't she?
Yes, she's in a close race, and again, even in Utah, it's going to come down to turnout. That we got to make sure that the Trump voters in that part of the state come back out. Plus, Senator Romney, Romney in the Senate race should be able to help her get her through. We'll see.
Here's the thing about this: you've got all these Republican districts with these close races up for grabs. Within 1, 2, 3 points.
Yes.
If the Democrats win most of them, they take the House.
Oh, absolutely. 23 seats.
As a result of Republicans failing to vote.
Right.
As a result of Republicans failing to show up on Election Day with family members and friends and colleagues to fix this and take care of this.
Right.
And then we will have endless subpoenas against the president, his family, the administration. We will have endless investigations, not of the top ranks of the FBI, but of those who've been trying to expose what took place in the administration during the course of the last election. You're not going to have border security. You're not going to have a wall. You're not going to have the kind of spending you need for our defense that the president and the Republicans have been promoting. On the Senate side, if there's another vacancy on the Supreme Court or two, we're not going to be able to fill it because the Democrats will simply block it.
Right.
So there's an enormous amount at stake. You tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, John McLaughlin. I view this as a race about the American people. Forget about Republicans, Democrats, Trump, not Trump. This is about us, what kind of country we want to have. And all we have to do is show up and vote and bring 5 people with us.
Yes, absolutely. And all those things you're saying, this is the most important midterm election that we have seen probably in our lifetimes, because the Democrats are really starting the 2020 campaign for president right now. They're running against Donald Trump, but to President Trump's credit, he's picking these Republican candidates up and he's putting them on his shoulders, trying to bring them across the finish line. So this is really consequential in terms of policy.
We'll be right back.
He's a fighter, and again, it's another.
He's the Republican that is Polkwin.
It's another dead even race that if our voters come out that voted for Trump in that part of the state, he can win.
New Jersey 3rd, Tom MacArthur, the Republican, versus Andy Kim.
And Kim is really an extreme Democrat, had some radical views, particularly on terrorism and some other things. And MacArthur, they tried to put him on the ropes on health care, but he's fighting back. So MacArthur could win if we get the right turnout. And the Senate race may be helping us in that part with Bob Eugen, because Menendez is definitely facing a big threat because he wasn't convicted, but he certainly had problems.
He's had ethics complaints filed against him. He's pretty dirty. It's quite serious. And you raise a very interesting point, which is the Democrats are running on health care, which seems kind of odd. But they're running on health care because they're now saying Medicare for all. But seniors in this country need to understand what Medicare for all means to the Democrats is eliminating Medicare.
Yeah.
What it means to union members is eliminating their contracts that they've negotiated on health care. What it means to other Americans is employer health care goes, independent health care, it's all eliminated, and you create sort of this VA, DMV system, top-down, Bernie Sanders, socialist health care. That's what they're campaigning on.
Yep. If you thought Obamacare was bad, wait till they...
It's France all over again. New York 22nd, Claudia Tenney versus Anthony Brindisi.
That's a tough one right now because in the published polls, the Democrat's been ahead. And he's one of those classic Democrats who's trying to tell you he's a moderate when he's not.
Isn't this happening all over the country? I would say the Democrats have nominated the most radical group of candidates in our history, in the Senate races, in the House races, and in the gubernatorial races. And not all of them, but most of them are trying to pretend that they're moderates.
Right. And you had to be for repealing the Trump tax cut, government-run health care, and open borders.
Unbelievable.
That's who they are.
Pennsylvania won, Bucks County, those areas. Brian Fitzpatrick, the Republican incumbent, versus Scott Wallace.
He's a very good candidate. And Wallace is a really extremist, particularly on the Iran nuclear deal. He supports that. He supports things that are really to the left on foreign policy.
Texas 32, we have Pete Sessions, a longtime Republican incumbent, versus Colin Allred. What's going on there?
Well, in Pete Sessions' district, you've got a lot more of these suburban voters, and the Democrats have made it about trying to take back suburban women from Pete in that district.
How do they hope to take back suburban women? Pushing abortion.
Right, but what they don't want to tell you is they're going to raise your taxes. They're going to take away your health care.
And they're not going to do a thing about abortion. The Supreme Court has nationalized and federalized this issue of abortion, so states can operate within a small box.
Right.
So when the Democrats, oddly, running on, I guess, more availability for abortion, although it's quite available, it's a non-issue, isn't it?
Right. And Pete's a solid. He's also a smart legislator, and he really works the district.
Mia Love in Utah, Republican incumbent versus Ben McAdams. She's in trouble, isn't she?
Yes, she's in a close race, and again, even in Utah, it's going to come down to turnout. That we got to make sure that the Trump voters in that part of the state come back out. Plus, Senator Romney, Romney in the Senate race should be able to help her get her through. We'll see.
Here's the thing about this: you've got all these Republican districts with these close races
Right.
up for grabs within 1, 2, 3 points.
Yes.
If the Democrats win most of them, they take the House.
Oh, absolutely. 23 seats.
As a result of Republicans failing to vote.
Right.
As a result of Republicans failing to show up on Election Day with family members and friends and colleagues to fix this and take care of this.
Right.
And then we will have endless subpoenas against the president, his family, the administration.